It is owners meeting week. That means that DeMeco Ryans and just about every other NFL coach is in Orlando, Florida, meeting to talk about stuff while the owners meet to talk. The owners get together and like they take turns getting up and giving long, self-important proclamations, but nobody's actually listening. I feel like the owners actually like the coaches actually do some stuff. As far as DeMeco started right in. I'm going to show you some videos that I got from Aaron Wilson's Twitter and Cody Stute's Twitter. Well, also Jonathan Alexander and I believe DJ Biename had asked some questions as well. But here is DeMeco Ryans right off the bat. Two different settings here. One was at breakfast and one was just outside where it sounded like it was just Houston people. The first question was, how does he feel about the hip drop tackle ban? For those of you who don't know, the hip drop tackle, freshly banned at the NFL owners meeting. It requires three things. One, a tackler to grab the ball carrier by the upper body, then to twist and drop his weight where the tackler comes off of his feet, and then thirdly, lands on the lower leg of the ball carrier. And supposedly has a 20% higher injury rate that you're going to hear DeMeco talk about here shortly.
The biggest thing with the hip drop tackles you see is just the significant injury that it causes. So you want to get the injuries out of the game. The biggest thing for me is just coaching defense and being a defensive player is I don't coach the hip drop tackle. I've never seen it coached, so I don't think people are coaching that to happen. I think it's just an unintended consequence of guys keeping their head out of the game, right? They're trying to not put their hat right on the ball, trying to keep their head out of the game, but you end up with your weight, right? In your body, you end up arm tackling a guy, where you still have to put body on body, get in front of guys, and make sure you're putting your shoulder through guys. Where the hip drop comes in is where guys are truly, they have their whole body behind the ball carrier. And so defenders, we have to do a better job of positioning ourselves to get more surface contact on the.
Yeah, when he says it's an unintended consequence, 100%. The more I watch of the hip drop tackle, I mean, guys are coached to come up with their head high. They're not supposed to be lowering their head and certainly not spearing and all of those things. But when you, as he said, I think usually it comes when you're behind the ball carrier. You get to that point where you're behind the ball carrier, and you know sometimes guys will still like drive a ball carrier forward, even though he's helping drive the ball carrier across the first goal, the first down marker, which is frustrating and infuriating at times. So I mean, it really comes from a place of not bad intent whatsoever. It's just you're in this position, you're not driving forward because you've got your head up like a good Boy Scout, and it's easy just to drop. As my friend Garrett Heinrich said, anybody who is a younger brother knows that this is the only way you can tackle your older brother. So for defensive backs trying to tackle tight ends, for instance, without being able to just drop down and you're not supposed to come in with your head, it's going to be kind of tough. I will set your mind at ease, Pinch Katie. How the hell do you play defense? What does a legal tackle even look like? There were only about 100 instances of hip drop tackles in the NFL last year. So it's going to have a minimal effect on what you see on Sunday. As DeMeco said, you don't coach it. So it's not like all of a sudden guys are going to have to be coached out of something that they've been drilling year after year after year after year. It's annoying, and I get that, and I understand it. But I also am somebody who did a video explaining what the hip drop tackle was a few weeks ago. And frankly, today, that video spiked up like 60,000 views over the course of a few hours. So it turns out I'm no different than somebody who works in Washington, D.C. I don't really care what the laws are as long as I'm the one being credited with either passing them or tearing them down. Next question was about a couple of questions. He was asked about Joe Mixon's, just the trade for Joe Mixon.
As I look at any player we bring in, Joe,
he was asked first about the age and durability of Joe Mixon.
I was looking at the positives. So I'm not thinking about a drop-off or anything, about the positives and the things that he's done in his career. career, he's been consistent throughout his entire career. You're talking about a guy who's gotten 1,000 yards for the past few years. So that's all I see. A guy who can move the chains for you, a guy who can open up the passing game with his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. So he just opens up the things that we can do offensively. And for everybody that plays this game and coaches this game, it's always 1 year at a time, and we'll see how it goes this year. And think about the next one as that comes along. But I look at guys like, man, how can you help us right here, right now, this year? And I think Joe will do an outstanding job.
You know, I haven't claimed victory on this, but maybe I should partially. I said from the get-go that I actually prefer a running back on his third contract because he's already gotten through that hairy second contract. The second contract is where fortunes are made and lost on NFL teams with running backs, because you sign a guy, all of a sudden it turns out he's got degenerative knee conditions or what have you, and he never makes it out through that second contract. With Joe Mixon, I think partly because he entered the league so young, people don't realize he's going to turn 28 this year, and it'll be his 8th season. So yeah, he's got a lot of tread off his tire as far as running backs go. And with running backs, it's not quite as simple as chronological age. There's also just how many years of experience that you've been subjected to that torture or that wear and tear is. But I think there's a perception of him as being a lot older than he actually is. Once you get through that second contract and you've been healthy, I feel like, all right, now you're more of a normal guy that maybe you have to worry about when he turns 30, 31 or so. But just like with Derrick Henry exited the old fears and concerns about what running backs are when he made it through this second contract, for the most part healthy. He had the one a couple of years ago. But so I feel completely fine with the wear and tear on his body. Somebody else had asked just about that trade in general and what went into it.
What kind of went into the Joe Mixon trade?
Yeah, with Mixon, we were looking to add a running back, same, right? We were looking to add depth. We're looking to add a playmaker at that position, and feel like Joe is a guy who's done it for a long time in this league. He's been very consistent. And going against him for multiple times, like he's a very physical runner, and he does a great job of protecting the ball. So does a great job in the passing game, just all around back. So be able to add him to our team, I think it helps our offense.
Mixon, when DeMeco talks about ball security, Mixon is one of the best this century in terms of fumble rate. For guys with a substantial number of carries, he is amongst the best at securing the football. Very, very rare that he fumbles. Obviously a weapon out of the backfield. One thing about him that is interesting is what he did last year compared to what he did this year in Houston. I think, yes, he's a year older, but Houston's going to be more of what he's good at, which is running with the QB under center. Just old school 7-yard depth for the running back in the backfield so he can get a run and start and hit the hole super, super hard. The Texans do a lot of that. The Bengals last year got away from having the QB under center. They were just either because that's what Burrow wanted or what have you. They had Burrow in the gun a whole bunch, and it changes. It changes the dynamics and it changes the geometry of the run game. As a linebacker, or well, as a defensive lineman myself, but a linebacker would tell you too. It's just different when the quarterback's under center. It's just the decision making is that much harder on the linebacker. The running back can hit the hole that much harder. And there's going to be a bunch of that with the Texans because they use the play action very, very effectively. And a lot of that just starts off with CJ being under center. So I feel great about it. I'm not worried about his age whatsoever, other than anybody else that I'd be worried about. Next question was about Aziz Al-Shire. I'm still working on naturalizing the way you pronounce his name, Al-Shire, and his presence here. He's a linebacker the Texans signed, for those of you who don't know.
A little more chased Aziz last year, ended up on the Titans, playing against you guys, ironically, and then this year you're able to snag him. What does he kind of bring to the table, and how nice is it to have that familiarity with him from San Francisco?
Yeah, Aziz is going to bring a physical style of play to our defense. He's going to bring leadership. He had a really great season last year with the Titans, so seeing him 2 times a year, it was you could see the growth that he made as a player. He played a lot of snaps for them. Last year he was healthy, so we look for him to just bring the same thing, bring that intensity, bring his leadership to our team, and just be himself and help us to be better.
As people point out, yes, it looks like he's being interviewed on vacation. These owners meetings. The coaches photo, which maybe I'll pull up a little bit later, is always one of the more entertaining parts of it. It doesn't look like it's too hot in Orlando right now. A lot of times it's all the coaches in various states of being overweight are look miserable and sweaty a lot of times. This picture this year, they didn't look that miserable. DeMeco looks fine. He's not going to be one of the ones that people are making fun of. But as far as Alshire, when he was in San Francisco with DeMeco, he was a Sam linebacker, strong side linebacker, but who filled in and played some Mike and Will when there were injuries. One year he replaced Dre Greenlaw and got a whole bunch more play at those two positions. And with the Texans, I think he's going to be the green dot guy. He'll wear the green dot. He'll be in there all three downs. He'll make the calls. And it's one of those things where I think what the Texans are hoping is that Alshire has not had a boatload of snaps in the NFL. He was usually below 500 snaps, except for the 1 year where he filled in for Greenlaw a lot in San Francisco. So he gets a 1-year deal in Tennessee last year, kind of a prove-it deal, and it worked out. He proved himself, but it feels like he proved himself to somebody who already knew he was good in DeMeco Ryans. I do wonder because, as I believe Cody alluded to, and as Nick said when he was on with Sean Pendergast and myself on Payne and Pendergast, the Texans did try to get him last year. They obviously weren't able to give him perhaps what Tennessee gave him. I wonder if at that point, DeMeco and Caserio still were learning each other and trying to figure out exactly what they did and didn't like. When you watch Azeez Alshire, you're going to see, compared to Blake Cashman, there's a lot more just old school linebacker traits to Azeez Alshire. Like, he looks like the guy physically and the way he plays that would be in the Marine Corps Honor Guard or what have you. Where they're like, I need 5 guys that look like Marines to stand in front of the president while we do whatever. This is what Alshire looks like. He plays old school linebacker. Like, he comes up, he tackles securely, like right down the center. We won't have to worry about any hip drop tackles with this guy. I feel good about Alshire. I feel good about the fact that there's 2 guys, DeMeco Autry and Alshire, who I think that A, you yoinked from the Titans, which is nice, but also B, you get a sense that both these guys are old school. They're old school football players in the way DeMeco is an old school football player. Honestly, I think DeMeco's not worried about the hip drop because in DeMeco's mind, that's not the way you inflict pain. Like, the hip drop, even ironically enough, it's got a 20 times greater chance of injury. But in DeMeco's mind, the way you inflict pain playing football is to hit people as hard as possible. And hip drop is not a violent action. So despite the fact that you've got a 20 times better chance of injuring the dude, apparently, it's not doing it the clean way. So don't fear the hip drop ban, everybody. DeMeco's got a plan for this. Doesn't coach it. Doesn't want anybody to be doing the hip drop ever. He'd rather have people hitting. All right. Aaron Wilson asked about Danielle Hunter, defensive end that the Texans signed, obviously.
Hunter, unique. Obviously, he's an accomplished rusher. He's also a local guy, and people call him very athletic for his size.
Yeah, Danielle's definitely a big guy, but he has the length. I think that's what sets you apart as a pass rusher. Danielle's length and his ability to consistently, get after the quarterback. He's had double-digit sacks multiple times in his career, and we're looking for him to add constant pressure on the quarterback. And I know Danielle is excited to be back home in Houston. We're excited to have him here in Houston because.
So Danielle, that got cut off, obviously. I'm excited to have Danielle Hunter in Houston. I like Jonathan Grenard a lot. I saw an article this morning that pointed out a few arguments for why Jonathan Grenard might be the better signing or might be the more effective defensive lineman. I'm going to say I'm skeptical because a lot of it was based on ESPN pass rush win rate. And from what I've seen and the way I understand it, they calculate that based on GPS data. And I said this during the year, even when Grenard and Will Anderson were the best in the league at this, or like first and third in ESPN win rush. ESPN win rush. ESPN pass rush win rate. I don't trust it because I think sometimes it gives too much credit for getting geographically close to the quarterback when you're not necessarily a threat. Like if you bull rush or go speed to power enough that you kind of compress the pocket, I think if you get close enough to the quarterback, they call that a win when in fact like actual quarterbacks aren't threatened by that. They can feel the pocket compressing. So this, that, or the other. Danielle Hunter had 2 times as many total QB pressures, almost 2 times as many total QB pressures as Jonathan Grenard. And like he averages every single year more QB pressures than Jonathan Grenard has ever had in a single season. Danielle Hunter's a better pass rusher. Grenard ultimately might be a better hybrid run pass player. But he still only had 1 genuinely productive season. So, and I'm not saying this is a way to bash Jonathan Grenard whatsoever. I think Danielle Hunter is just that much more elite of a pass rusher. So I'm cool with it. There's zero part of me that's worried about that. And it's also like it's Minnesota being at a different stage in their team development, obviously. I mean, they're letting a quarterback walk. They're bringing in younger guys, whereas the Texans have said, all right, we're on our rookie quarterback window. We're going to sign some veteran players to 1, 2, and 3 year deals so that we've got this little window and they're full steam ahead. I'm very, very happy about the aggressiveness. Cody Stutz then asked about DeMeco Autry, if I put this together properly.
Kind of with DeMeco Autry, you played against him a little bit. Yeah. Nick was pretty excited about Autry. He said, he's the type of guy you'd bring him into the back alley with you.
Yeah, no doubt. If you watch the tape, Autry is a great football player. He loves football. You can tell it just by watching his tape and the respect that he has around the league, not only from offensive linemen but also other defensive linemen. Understand his play style and how effective he is as a player, playing inside, playing outside. He gets it done. So excited to add, his relentless mindset to our team.
In a different era, DeMeco Autry maybe could have been a 3 technique. Things have just evolved and changed enough now that to be an every down defensive player, I don't know how many non-Aaron Donalds will ever be a 285-pound 3 technique, like really effective 3 technique again. But Aaron Donald, plus Aaron Donald was 285, but he was also 6 foot tall. So that's like a guy who's 6'3" being, 305 or so in terms of just center of gravity and mass and all that. DeMeco Autry, though, like I was saying with Alshire, he just looks like a football player. Like whether you're on a say football playing Jesse or what have you, the way he plays, there's a physicality to it. And DeMeco Autry is not the type of athlete that Danielle Hunter is, but he uses what athleticism he does have really effectively, and he backs it up with just old school brute power and anger. So that's cool. I do feel like this defense got a little bit more blue collar to it. Danielle Hunter is a pure pass rusher. He's which they're different. Pure pass rushers are almost kind of like the difference between pitchers and position players on defense. They're a little bit different. They're on their own little world. I think the other guys they brought in are like not just lunch pail carrying, but will like bash you over the head with their steel lunchbox because you stood at the vending machine too long. It's the right kind of bullying. Okay, it's the kind of bullying you want when you pay somebody millions of dollars. What was the thought process in trading back from number 23 to number 42?
Went into dropping down from 23 to 42. What was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, the thought process behind moving back, in the draft is just we feel like in this draft there's a really large amount of players right in that second to third, fourth round. It's a lot of guys right there that can come in and help our team. Right, we feel like that's where as I said, the sweet spot of the draft is this year, and so we're excited about that move, and we feel like we can add some really quality players to our team.
So excited about that move. Think we're going to add some quality players to our team. The biggest indication to me, and I'm going to get into this. I've got some positive reviews for the Texans from various national media folks, and honestly, I'm not happy about it. There's too much positivity. I know a trap. I've watched Braveheart enough times. I can sense an ambush. So I take all of these with a grain of salt. But I will say, the biggest indicator for me in terms of the change in perception of the Texans was that the Texans trade out of the first round, and there wasn't immediate uproar and outrage by people about how stupid the Texans are. So there's that. That was progress. And then I heard from various smart people that I listened to in the podcast sphere, basically credit Caserio for backing up what they're saying. It was Dane Brugler that said this. Dane Brugler was talking about how the talent, as it does in most first rounds, probably really drops off somewhere around 15 through 20. And then he said, you see Nick Caserio at 23 trades back because he feels like he's probably not right where the really good values are. I swear, there's no way in hell that would have happened 3 years ago. If Caserio had traded out of the first round, if they had a first-round pick at any given point, throw a dart. The Texans probably didn't have a first-round pick. But if they had a first-round pick and they traded back out of the first round, it would have been the dumbest thing that anybody had ever seen. Now, they've elevated themselves, temporarily at least, into getting the benefit of the doubt. It's the same way the Chiefs can trade away L'Jarius Sneed for way, way less than people thought you'd be able to get for L'Jarius Sneed. But it's the Chiefs. And look, they need to bolster some other positions. You trust that they're going to be able to develop they've got multiple young draft picks at cornerback right now, and they kind of get a little pass. So when the Patriots traded away Chandler Jones, people were like, oh yeah, he had some off-field issues. Second rounder, I mean, sure, he's one of the best pass rushers in the league, but it's the Patriots. They know what they're doing. I'd love to get to the point where we can do stupid things and actually get credited for them. And I feel like we might be close. The Super Bowl championship or 3 helps. I've noticed that. That seems to be the big defining factor. Next question was just as far as the actual trading back itself, though, this draft has offensive tackles out the wazoo and wide receivers out the wazoo. Also a boatload of offensive talent that'll probably go in the first 10 to 15 picks. 4 quarterbacks perhaps at the top of the draft. I think that in a lot of ways, in any given draft, that 20 through 32 is about where the talent drop-off is. But this year especially, because of the concentration of wide receivers and offensive tackles, I think they feel very, very good about either a wide receiver, a defensive tackle, perhaps even a second tight end, whatever it might be. It's back there in the second and third rounds. And the way DeMeco talks about it, I'm almost just like when remember DeMeco last year said, hey, there's 2 quarterbacks at the top of the draft and we're going to take one of them. And then everybody proceeded to ignore that right up until CJ Stroud was drafted. I feel like DeMeco just said they're cool with the people in the second round, but that will be completely ignored, and there will be a lot of speculation about the Texans trading back up into number 1, which perhaps they could if all he was doing was throwing flack out there. I hate this time of year so much. He was asked about Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson, the 2 cornerbacks, that 2 former top 10 cornerbacks who have each been on a couple teams apiece, and the Texans picked up recently.
And some of the guys on defense. What do you think about what you guys have done so far in free agency?
We're excited about the guys we've
I take it back. He was asked about just what they've done in free agency so far.
added. Up front, we wanted to get better on the defensive line. That was an emphasis for us. And it's not just one guy. It's multiple guys. So being able to add multiple guys who can move around and do a lot of different things is just unlocks things for us when it comes to a schematic standpoint. And we're able to add really good football players. That's the key. All the guys we added have had success in this league. They've done it for a while, so excited to see what those guys bring to our team.
Yeah, as far as somebody said, is Brevin Jordan gone or something? No, and yes, he flashed towards the end of the season last year, but it's been multiple years now where you wait for him to take that next step forward. And I do like the fact that they've used him kind of as an H-back and they've moved him around a little bit. I don't look at him as the young and future tight end for the Texans. There's just too many things about him that don't quite fit the mold. Like he's a smaller guy. I know he looks big and muscular. He's a smaller guy, and I think he's a willing blocker. It just hasn't been able to click for him so far. So maybe they'll continue to use him, but if we were to get a prototypical 6'5", 265-pound guy at some point, I got to be like, I'll take that at this point. I remain hopeful that Brevin Jordan will continue to develop within this offense. He's just not the guy I'm thinking of right now. Next question was about Jeff Okudah and CJ Henderson.
With the two corners, I see young players, right? Young, talented guys who, for wherever they were picked, it really doesn't matter to me. I see young, talented guys on tape, long guys who can run, who can play sticky coverage. You just have to be more consistent. And sometimes guys just need a new scene, right? Hopefully, change of scenery helps these guys out. But it's adding those guys we just talked about. Man, you want to come in and compete. So his competition, and that both guys understand that, and as much healthy competition as we can have on our roster, that means we're getting better. If our depth is getting better, we have guys actually competing for spots, and our team gets better.
Yeah, I don't think there's a single favorite for second cornerback right now, other than like a Des King in a pinch or something. And I know the Texans just signed another guy that can compete for the nickel cornerback. Texans spent a lot of time in nickel. They were like 6th in the league last year in nickel. Five defensive backs on the field. But like if you look at Jeff Okudah, CJ Henderson, Troy Pride, Mike Ford, Chris Boyd, I think all of those guys have, in theory, as much of a chance of being the second cornerback, like at least where the coaches are looking at it right now. It's going to be a genuine competition. And when you bring in those two guys that are former top 10 picks, I believe CJ when he says he doesn't worry about their draft, I believe DeMeco when he said that he doesn't worry about their draft position where they were drafted. However, those physical traits that got them drafted as high as they did and their college film, like that's why they're here right now. And it is like bring in as much talent as possible. The Texans tried it with Anthony Hargreaves. They tried it with Gary and Conley. Didn't work out with those guys. But like I thought Bill O'Brien was on the right track there. With cornerback, it is really, really hard to find the guys that have the freakish natural ability to be good NFL cornerbacks. And if you just keep rolling the dice on guys like that and allow them to compete, at some point maybe a strike. Question next was about expectations having been raised.
The moves you guys have made have been well received publicly. Now people are talking you guys kind of like in that Super Bowl window. How do you guys go about, handling those type of expectations going into 2024?
We don't discuss those expectations. For us, it's about getting better every single day, and that my process doesn't change. My mindset about our expectation doesn't change. If each guy is focused on himself, they're focused on getting a little bit better each and every day, each and every week, then we'll be exactly where we need to be. The expectations from the outside really doesn't matter because of the expectations we put on ourselves. That's what matters the most. And no one is more critical of us than we are. Mm-hmm. And I want our players to feel that same thing, our coaches to feel the same thing. Are you striving to be the best in the NFL? If you're striving to be the best, then we'll be where we need to be.
Yeah, there's something that Jimmy Ward said on Texans All Access yesterday that I liked too, which was that simply, they haven't really accomplished anything. I think that sometimes maybe some of the younger guys especially need to hear that from the veterans that like, all right, that's cool. Yeah, we're better than people thought we were going to be. We won a division championship, but that's not the ultimate goal. So like you're to start eating that rat poison that Nick Saban always talks about. There needs to be a little bit of that, I think. So maybe sometimes it comes better from the veteran players more so than the coach. Just the reminder that, like, hey, all right, you guys, it's awesome, right? Remember that Ravens game? Did that feel awesome? Is that where you want to stay? You want to be like, oh, look at that, we won a wild card game, and now we play the Ravens. No, of course you don't want that to be the case. You don't want to show up like that again, and they'll have the sting of that. God, football, it sucks to lose. Just sucks so much. The importance of getting Dalton Schultz back.
How important was that for what you guys want to do on offense and to continue to help C.J. Stroud?
Getting Dalton back was huge for Dalton.
Oh, no, I got it.
He showed up really big time in those critical moments. When we needed him 2-minute situations, Dalton has very sure hands, and he's a safety blanket for C.J. Whenever he gets in trouble, Dalton is there, and Dalton 9 times out of 10, he's going to make a play for you. So whenever you can get a guy at Dalton's caliber back who can make plays in the pass game, really stress the defense at the intermediate level, Dalton really opened things up for our offense. So excited to have him back, excited to have his leadership back. He was a great teammate last year, so excited to see how he continues to grow this year.
Okay, so his hands weren't so certain and sure in the playoff games, but other than that, yes, very good. I think the communication on the intermediate stuff has been huge. There have been just so many times this year, the ones that we could see with our bare naked eyes, the adjustments that they made at times on routes within a game, knowing when and where to take advantage of guys, but then also times where we didn't know that there was an adjustment until CJ told us afterwards. That's gone on a lot, and with a young quarterback and a veteran tight end, that's just going to get better this year. So I'm excited about that. I know that some of you were very skeptical of bringing Dalton Schultz back because he's not the best blocker in the world and he's not the most dynamic athlete. He was, though, probably by far the best tight end that you were going to have a crack at, either in free agency or in the draft, really, because the kid from Georgia's not going, he's not going to last until the second round. Next question. Oh, and I saw one of you ask about the hip drop. Mr. Robot, should we consider going all offense, especially on faster players in theory, because tackling will be harder? I would say no, just because, Mr. Robot, there were only about 100 instances of a hip drop tackle last year. It's really not common. And as DeMeco pointed out at the very beginning of this video, it's not something they coach. It's just something that has been happening more because guys are coming up with their head up, and sometimes it's just easier to drop that hip and do what's now an illegal and banned practice to get the guy down. But I don't, that's, I don't know how many total games. That's probably about like 0.7 times per game or so that it was used this year. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. I understand people's objection to anytime there's a rule change that takes physicality out of the game. If anything, this will theoretically, those 100 hip drop tackles will now turn into guys actually trying to drive their legs and drive through a ball carrier. So could make it more violent if that helps out at all. You'll have fewer kind of dinky injuries where somebody falls on somebody's ankle, but you'll have more violent injuries, just not as frequently. So there you go, or at least the perception of more violence. What is it like? What has it been like working with Cal and Hannah McNair, I presume?
What I always loved about the organization is that family environment, and Cal has been great to work with. Him working with myself and Nick, it's awesome owners, and it's great to work for great owners, great people, right, who truly care about the players, they care about the people working in the organization, and that's what sets them apart. It's just their heart. They're really very genuine. They love football. They love to win. They're passionate about it, and we are as well. So it's easy to work together.
Yeah. Again,
I don't coach the hip drop.
So does a great job in the passing game. Just our defense, he's going to bring leadership. A big guy.
All right. Anybody new to my live stream? This is what happens at least once: is I accidentally hit the wrong spot, and I have to find myself back where we are.
Career, and we're looking for him to. Autry is a
process behind that.
Yeah, the thought process behind moving back. We don't discuss those expectations. So whenever you can get a guy,
Have you kind of
We've made a lot of progress on here already.
felt like this offseason the team's turned into a bit of a destination for?
Oh, there we go. Okay, so Cal and Hannah, yes, much bigger difference in perception between now and 2 years ago. I think the best thing about DeMeco coming back, or one of the better things about DeMeco coming back, was that nobody was going to explain to DeMeco just how evil and awful the McNair family was. Like, DeMeco played here. They drafted DeMeco. DeMeco, obviously knew Mr. McNair. And so that part of it was just a null and void argument. And it took a lot of the wind out of the sails of a lot of people that just really, frankly, spoke out of their butts a lot when they could be in the position of looking like the white knights who are talking about the evil Texans. It's that part's been nice, but obviously that's all predicated on winning too. If we weren't winning, the gushing wouldn't be nearly as profusive. I don't know. It's late in the day. Cody asked about them becoming more of a destination for free agents.
Players was in previous years, if it worked out financially, okay, but the success the team has had, you kind of heard that from players, and I know there's players publicly talking about they'd love to play for the Texans. Like, you kind of felt like you guys have turned into a destination for players?
For us, it's about adding the right guys. So if guys want to play for us, that's great. But it's about adding the right guys to our team. I guess it's cool to hear that guys would like to come and play for us, but you also have to understand we're going to work here, right? It's going to be tough working out in the Houston heat. You know, guys understand that, but I think the excitement from guys wanting to come to Houston, it comes from our young players, CJ, Will, Tank, what those guys were able to do last year.
I think honestly, the quarterback is the big thing. I've talked to veteran players before about ring hunting. If you're going to go ring hunting, there's really only a few teams that you'd feel comfortable doing that, and it's all based on the quarterback. And at this point, obviously, it's Pat Mahomes if you're going to go do that, and potentially CJ Stroud and a few of the other guys. I mean, like, you got to start handicapping it, and obviously Pat Mahomes is the safest bet right now. I don't think the Texans are at a point where a veteran player is going to come and take a discount per se, or a huge discount to play here. I think Danielle Hunter maybe took a different structure of a deal than perhaps he would have preferred to get if you were just going for max guaranteed dollars. Maybe he wouldn't have taken that elsewhere, but he would take it in Houston. I don't know. I think also that, like, Xavier Howard, Xavier Howard has said that the money's not everything. He's made enough. He would like to come home. Yeah, like, I never take those statements completely at face value, but I think there's probably some truth to it. I don't think Xavier Howard would have said that 2 years ago. So whether you want to call it a destination, or maybe it's if you're going to put it on the State Department list of places to travel to, Houston used to be like one of these nations that's on the brink of civil war. And God knows why would you go there? And if you do, you need 27 shots and quinine and all that stuff. Whereas now they're just like, oh yeah, they're cool. It's like just going to any other safe, non-potentially war-torn region. It's progress. Next question was about CJ moving forward, and this might be a little bit of too much ambient noise for you. Let's check this out.
We haven't asked you about CJ yet, and he had such a great rookie year. At the end of the season, you talked about, hey, there's more in front of him. What do you see from him this offseason, and where do you see, just in terms of more things he can do and where he is right now?
Yeah, with CJ, I see from him this offseason really taking a huge jump. I think now coming in, he doesn't have to relearn a playbook. He knows what we're asking him to do. Right now he can be more honed in on the details of his mechanics, all those small things where he can get better as a quarterback. He really jumped off in his first year just with his leadership. Although he's a young player, the leadership, what he brings to the locker room really stood out. And now as he continues to grow, a lot of film is out there on him now, so defenses will have tendencies on him. So now it's a matter of him really honing in on himself and attacking all of the little details to be a step ahead of the defenses.
Yeah, and obviously, that's what we say about every rookie in every sport, that they've got to adjust to the adjustments. I think if you move it beyond just CJ and how does the offense advance, obviously the run game needs to get better. For them to be an elite offense, they're going to have to improve the run game. And you might say, well, why this offense, that offense? This offense is going to lean into the run as a way of setting up the play action. And that's worked really, really well. That's the frustrating thing, is that you don't have to run the ball well to set up the play action. You just have to run the ball and show that you're committed to it. However, the Texans show that they're committing to running the ball, and that does create opportunities in play action. And those worked out really well. CJ was one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. They were one of the most aggressive downfield in the league. But when you're also kind of just at times just sacrificing some of those downs to set up the run, and you're only getting 1 or 2 yards at a pop, that's not helping out anybody long term. So for like this offense this year, I am more concerned about the run game and CJ's involvement in it. Like how quickly can CJ be part of the catalyst for getting the run game going? Not just Joe Mixon, but CJ himself and the way he directs everything. Because that'll take the offense light years ahead. More so, like that's the biggest chunk difference the Texans can make this year. CJ is going to make improvements in the way he reads defenses, anticipates blitz, all that stuff. But the huge chunk is simply the run game. It's 2024, but there's still a place for the run game, especially when you're going to run the ball as often as the Texans do. Let me ask you a few questions, then I'm gonna play some of these reviews of the Texans free agency that are making me increasingly nervous. Which teams will be penalized the most for hip drop tackles? It's a good question. I always just like defer to either the Ravens or the Steelers on that. The Texans, like I said, I don't think anybody coaches it. I do think that DeMeco doesn't worry about the missed tackles as much as long as guys are swarming to the ball. And DeMeco's a coach that wants there to be as close to legal projectile action where you are just trying to seek and destroy. And that's the opposite of a hip drop. Hip drop is kind of like you come in like the water boy and size a guy up. And then you know, when he was trying to learn how to tackle and Henry Winkler was upset with him and because he hadn't visualized yet. That's what you do after you latch onto the guy. You try to drop on your little hiney there. He's not coaching people to drop on their heinies. So I don't think it'll be the Texans. Let's see. DeMeco coach speak as bottom of the 32. If we go back and listen to DeMeco in interviews, he's straightforward. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. So you mean that as a positive. Yeah, like he doesn't do the old acceptable lying stuff all that much. He does. He'd defer or he'll demur, I guess. He just won't say anything at all, or he'll kind of give a stock answer, but he doesn't try to get too deep into it. He just doesn't answer dishonestly. There was one time last year, can't remember where it was, where he was forced into a situation where he had to use coach speak. Oh, it was probably with the quarterbacks. It was probably with the backup quarterbacks. But even then, remember that first week, I was getting agitated because everybody was just assuming that Davis Mills was going to start against Tennessee. And I'm like, nobody's actually asked him this, and nobody's actually said that Davis Mills is starting. Lo and behold, Case Keenum started. They did a brilliant job of that. They just kept it. They just let everybody make their assumptions and run with it. And they didn't even have to answer. They didn't have to use the coach speak. I mean, I don't know ultimately if it made a difference or not, but not the run game, pass protection. CJ had the ball a little long in some games. You know what, KB? Really good point. I think the thing with CJ is that didn't bother me when it did happen because there was growth and evolution by CJ throughout the year with that. Because remember, at first got sacked a bunch in the first 2 games. Then he learned to get rid of the ball real quickly after that. But then it got to the point where he's probably getting rid of the ball a little too quickly, and he went however many games without getting sacked. And then he kind of was toying with and figuring out exactly, when, where, how he should hold on to the ball. So yes, he'll need to continue to improve on that. But I felt like he showed an awareness of where the challenges were, and that there's a balance you got to find with there. So I'm not as worried about that. But yes, definitely an area for improvement. Let's see. Okudah definitely swarms to the ball. I know Okudah at least grades out better as a run defender. So, like, if that's the difference, if he's just eager, then cool. And if the Texans play a lot of zone, then you better have zone corners that want to come up and tackle. Let's see. CJ's going to have to work hard to be aware of linebackers spying him and jumping his passes across the middle. Yeah, good notes on just like what happens in the second year of a quarterback. Pretty much like the draft. They said we wouldn't take a QB, or we were taking Bus Young. Yes, right. Yeah. People were. I think it was after DeMeco had already said that they were going to take one of those two quarterbacks. There was widespread speculation the Texans weren't taking a quarterback at all. CJ throws the ball like a dart. One of the sweetest deliveries I've ever seen, and quick too. He's not bad. He's not bad. It's pretty damn. It's a nice place to be in all of a sudden in Houston. All right. The Texans, after a very, very quiet day one of free agency, ended up getting active and getting a whole lot of praise. Even though in the last week or so, the Jets and the Titans have started to steal some of that praise as they've made less heralded, less marquee, but required moves. Now, the Titans also picked up L'Jarius Sneed. That was a marquee move that unfortunately they pulled off on a Friday afternoon, so it didn't get the marquee attention that sorry, Titans. So it sucks to be you. But I was searched around. Honestly, I just wanted to do something where I found somebody finding somebody with a national name saying something negative about the Texans free agency, and I couldn't find it. And it makes me a little bit sick because I feel like these two timing backstabbers are going to get us at the first sign of adversity. And I'm taking names and I'm remembering them. Okay, so don't go try to waffle. I don't know how you feel about the Texans right now. Pat McAfee, I love, obviously. I've never accused him of waffling. But here's Pat McAfee on the Texans free agency so far.
The Texans and what they've been able to do, they're active, and it feels like DeMeco is going to be able to recruit and get people to come to Houston. Texas has the no state income tax. I do believe they're one of the states that has that, so that's quite a benefit. But if you look at what they've been able to do, I did not expect this from the Houston. The Houston Texans were supposed to suck for 10 years. Now they're seemingly making smart moves and getting better every single day, Lombo. Do you see it that way?
Okay, so I want to point out one thing. Pat McAfee asked the question and then give a soliloquy for 45 seconds before he asked the question again. So he was asking a question, basically asking Lombardi to confirm what McAfee was saying. I think part of it though too is, and it's weird to say this, I think in some ways CJ Stroud has almost been under discussed as an element for all this. I think that if CJ had come in and not necessarily been so astoundingly good, would Nick have been as aggressive as they've been? And I say that knowing that it's not like they've not gone out and spent or made the moves of some of the more notoriously aggressive teams in free agency, but the Danielle Hunter, the Nico Autry, even the Joe Mixon trade to a certain degree, as well as just the other moves. I think people combine that with CJ Stroud, as Pat was saying, and it feels good. Let's hear if let's hear if Lombardi agrees with Pat's question.
DeMeco Ryans has taken that 49er approach that we're going to put money in defensive linemen. That's what we're going to do. That's what wins the game. That's what wins the game in the fourth quarter. That's what we have to do. Now, Greenhardt's a good player. They lost him, but they replaced him with Danielle Hunter. And I think, to me, they have a formula on what they want to do. They're following the San Francisco blueprint, which has been successful.
Okay, I got a little bit confused when he said that they're following the San Francisco blueprint, which has been successful, because I guess it depends on whether the strategy per se has been successful. You got to remember that when you talk about drafting defensive linemen, John Lynch took the job in 2017. So Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took the job in 2017. Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner, those defensive linemen, if this is the San Francisco strategy, they'd been drafted in 2015 and 2016, but they were very big parts of the 49ers making those runs while John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan were there. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have drafted Solomon Thomas and Javon Kinlaw as their defensive linemen. And Nick Bosa. Don't forget about Nick Bosa. So they've drafted 3 defensive linemen in the first round. So I guess you could argue about just how successful they've been with those first 2 that they drafted. But like obviously Nick Bosa is a huge part of the engine that drives that. And DeForest Buckner was for a while. Eric Armstead was for a while. I don't know if it needs to be San Francisco East or anything like that. I personally am biased because I was a defensive lineman, but I love the concept in theory of building up from the front back, partly because I think pass rushers especially if they're genuinely good, they're consistent. Like they're going to provide that when they're healthy. They're going to provide that pass rush every year. Cornerbacks, it's not as consistent. You can't. It's not necessarily other than for the genuinely astoundingly good. It's not. It's funny. You could go around the league and talk to people about cornerbacks, awesome cornerbacks, and I feel like every fan base feels like, I remember that time he got beat. And there's some truth to that. It's a little bit hit or miss in any given year, and some of it's just the luck of the draw with the matchup. So I like having that engine up front and those guys doing it. This was Matt Miller on the Dan Patrick show. For the life of me, I can't even remember what he was talking about.
I really enjoyed the moves that the Houston.
Oh no, this is okay. This is Trevor Sakema, the PFF NFL lead draft analyst, talking about the Texans offseason to Dan Patrick.
I did not expect this from the Houston.
San Francisco wins the San Francisco.
What the Texans, you go to quarterback like CJ.
Happening again. Okay, here we go. So this is Trevor Sakema, PFF NFL analyst on the Dan Patrick show.
I really enjoyed the moves that the Houston Texans have made. Obviously, you go to quarterback like CJ Stroud last year, he hits the ground run and absolutely explodes. And what I love about what the Texans are doing is they're seeing that and they're not saying, all right, cool, we're ahead of schedule a little bit. This is good. They're all in. Like they're ready for this.
Yeah, and like a lot of you have said too, somebody made a good point. I think the Texans were surprised by how good CJ was so quickly. The turnaround and rebuild was at light speed. Yeah, I think they went in probably expecting any number of things that could happen, but for CJ to remember not get off to a fast start. This is what's so dicey sometimes about life in the NFL is that sometimes the guys that are the most conscientious don't get off to the fastest starts because they're trying to do everything right. Like whenever you pick up a new skill, think about trying to swing a golf club. Like you might be natural and you go out and you swing a club and you hit the ball really well. And then you start to refine your skills and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. And like I think anything that takes a lot of fine motor skill can be like that. And CJ, to his credit, took the hard way, which is you try to learn everything from the ground up and do it fundamentally sound and everything like that. You're not going to necessarily jump out ahead and wow people immediately if you're not an incredible athlete. But he did just brick by brick. He just kept building. And you're right, though. I think it ends up being lightning fast when you look at maybe what Caserio or DeMeco thought, whatever their horizon was for how long it might take to turn it around. It happened very, very fast. So the next thing that Sakema talks about was just the feel of this draft or the feel of this free agency period for the Texans.
Defensive centric free agency. I specifically love, okay, they probably thought they were going to lose Jonathan Grenard. They do. They go out and get Danielle Hunter. And then they also go out and get DeMeco Autry. So, man, it's just like boom, boom, all these moves on the defensive side of the ball. It gives them the chance to be super flexible with what they're going to do in the NFL draft.
And I think part of that, though, too, is, and I don't know when Sakema was saying that, if you look at the people the Texans did sign, it looks like they had this defensive-centric strategy. And certainly DeMeco had already said that they were going to build the defensive line out. But however in they were on Saquon Barkley, you can't ignore that or discount that. Keenan Allen, though, especially, they made what was actually a better offer than the Bears, technically, or at least, if you approximate the value. They made a better offer than the Bears did, but for whatever reason, the Chargers wanted to send Keenan Allen out of the division. Like, they made some plays for offensive guys, and I always keep that in mind. They made that play for Keenan Allen, so whatever that means for the draft or remaining free agency, obviously that factors in. So I think other than the defensive line, I don't know how much they went into this free agency saying we've got to focus on defense, or if that's just kind of the way that it worked out. Next one is Pete Prisco. Now, Pete, I know from going way back, and Pete can be a little bit surly and cynical at times, but he does not like blow smoke up anybody's butt. He was pretty bullish on the Texans offseason. This is CBS Sports.
Them the chance to be super flexible with what they're going to do in the NFL draft.
And they signed Danielle Hunter in free agency.
And a bunch of other guys that can play. DeMeco Autry will help their defense a great deal. Al Shahir, the linebacker who, they had in San Francisco when DeMeco Ryans was there, comes from Tennessee, adds him some nice juice at that level as well. So, and Jeff Okudah, who hasn't lived up to the expectations, but has capability of being a solid starting corner.
I got to tell you, that 1 year, $4.8 million for Jeff Okudah. There's being a top 10 pick, it just keeps paying dividends. I mean, that's a nice price tag for a 1 year deal for a guy that's still kind of trying to prove who he is in the NFL. It also shows you just where the cap has gone, that this is the price you pay for a guy to come in and basically try out. I'm cool with it. I'm not a grumpy old man about it. Not one bit. Not one bit. I played with I had a Fred Hoagland who played for the Oilers for a little bit. He was a tight ends coach when I was a rookie in Jacksonville. And I remember talking to him about his first couple of years in the NFL. I don't think he was a rookie with the Oilers, but his wife, who was a teacher, was making more money than he was his rookie year in the NFL. So things have changed a little bit. Next one was Pete Prisco. I think he talks about how it was all about the defense too.
Bringing back Schultz was big for them. You get Tank Dell back. They're going to score points. This team is moving in the right direction. I love what they're doing. I give them an A.
That's just the third team, I believe, that you've given an A to. The only others were the Falcons and the Bucks.
Falcons and the Bucks. So only the third team Pete Prisco gave an A to. This is where I'm going to accept the A. I will accept your A, Professor. And here's why. I don't like it when the teams that just absurdly outspend everybody else get A's in free agency, because anybody can do that. It takes a little bit of judgment and discretion to fill in holes, but not go after every single piece of bling that you want. Honestly, L'Jarius Sneed, that's one where I haven't seen or heard a lot of chatter from Texans fans upset that the Texans didn't pick up L'Jarius Sneed. I think you're at the point now where, look, you can see where they are on the cap. You can see that they've spent a good chunk of money. Yes, you could trade for L'Jarius Sneed and finagle away pretty easily to fit him in future years. But I think that when you start looking out at your time horizons and think about paying Nico Collins, think about paying Derek Stingley, hopefully if he stays healthy, that you just can't buy everything off the shelf that you want in free agency, because it comes back to bite you. So that's where they are right now. They're getting very, very good marks, but it's not just because they spent so exorbitantly. Same thing happens with drafts, by the way. If a team has 2 first-round picks, they almost always get an A, because people look at it, oh, well, look at that. You drafted 2 guys who I know and watched highlights of. Of course that's a good draft. Brilliant. Even last year, the Texans, even the people who wanted to criticize the Will Anderson trade value, which I get, I understand that, they would still give the Texans an A. They would say they vastly overspent, but my God, look at what they got. They're the 2nd and 3rd picks overall. A. It's the rich getting richer is all that is, damn it. Okay. Oh, okay. So that was all I had of the draft reviews. I'm going to bring back a favorite of mine, and this is Zaire Franklin, the linebacker for the Colts, who has a podcast, In the Trenches. EJ Speed is on with him a lot, and T.Y. Hilton was on this particular episode, and it got really interesting because Zaire Franklin asked T.Y. Hilton who a young receiver that T.Y. Hilton sees himself in is.
But who's a receiver that you feel like reminds you of yourself?
I'm going to tell you a receiver and a quarterback that reminds me of me in 12. It's still early, but I'm telling you right now, I'm going to make some of y'all mad, but it is what it is. I'm going to speak facts.
Don't do it. I think I know you.
I know exactly what
Don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it.
That's crazy, bro.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Go ahead. So that means y'all on the same page. So that means y'all on the same page.
Okay, it got really loud for like 30 seconds. So I cut that out for you. But Zaire Franklin and EJ Speed have spoken very highly of CJ Stroud before on this. Some of you saw that. It was very nice. It's very nice. They're talking about how much they respect and appreciate how good he is, but how much they hate him because of that. So they know where T.Y. Hilton is going with this. And T.Y. Hilton, I'm gonna forgive this because he says some nice things about Tank Dell, but he gets in a little shot at Houston on his way to saying nice things about Tank Dell and CJ Stroud.
Who? Go ahead.
They're a part of the city that I own, right? Okay.
Yeah, the city that he owns. All right, again, I'll put up a clown mask or something of him walking in Energy Stadium. Yes, he owned us, and this is why the compliment means that much more. And I respect T.Y. Hilton, although I'll show a clip at the end of this where I don't. It's gonna anger you. I respect that he's able to recognize game. He's not gonna let any personal feelings about the city of Houston, which he once owned and no longer owns.
CJ and Tank Dell, bro.
Niggas not ain't like that.
Listen, them two right there, bro. Like, I feel like they're more off-camera guys. You feel me? Like, well, off-script guys. You feel me? Like, CJ could scramble, Luck could scramble. CJ's looking for one person. Luck could scramble, he's looking for one person.
I hate that he just said that because I agree.
Yeah, she said, I hate that he just said that because I agree. And Zaire Franklin, the last time they talked about CJ Stroud was just going off about the Nico Collins catch in the play-in game at the end of the season, where it looked like CJ was trying to throw the ball out of bounds. And then it looked like it was going to be a definite pick. And then it looked like, oh my gosh, he just threw it to where only Nico Collins could get to it. That it was incredible. But that also, as T.Y. is pointing out about CJ only looking for Tank, I started to bristle up a little bit there because I do think that CJ's done a pretty good job of spreading the ball around. But T.Y. makes a very good point here.
And it's crazy because, like, bro, I was watching one of their games and CJ scrambled and just threw it to Tank.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Back right corner.
Yes, sir. Just threw it to Tank. I say, boy, I got on my phone, I tell my homeboy, I say, yo, that look like me and Luck, bro. Like, no cap. Like, that's different. And as I kept watching them, they kept going off script. And then when they get on script, like, it's just like, man, how are we going to stop these two?
Yeah, so that play in the Bucks game, right? That was one where CJ scrambled out and Tank was making that second or third move downfield. Like, as CJ's setting to throw up, Tank is just starting to make his cut on the scramble drill and ends up hitting him in the end zone. Like that kind of stuff, and some of the just that ESP they have between them. That part's really cool. And then T.Y. goes on to talk about like what's going to happen when Tank comes back. You know, Nico developed that relationship with CJ also after Tank left. We saw it in the Colts game. What's going to happen when Tank comes back? I know, T.Y. All right, I'm excited about it too. I'm glad that Pat McAfee and T.Y. Hilton can share so much in our excitement, and not to mention elevating the public profile of the Houston Texans. It's very nice of the Indianapolis Colts. Thank you very much. Next one was Zaire Franklin simply gets sick of the CJ love.
I respect it.
It's been too much fucking CJ love on this pod, bro. I ain't gonna lie. It really ain't. You know what? Now I'm back bullying because I was trying to be cool with him. I apologize and all that shit.
I'm gonna give him his props.
Now I'm not friends with him and none of that. Like, now I'm gonna bump you in if I see you anywhere now. It was not that.
So CJ, my dog.
Yeah, so EJ Speed went to talk about how he was at the Browns playoff game. I think he has the same, there's some kind of connection there, either with the agent or somebody else, and how nice CJ's parents were, and they talked about CJ growing up. It's really this EJ Speed and Zaire Franklin podcast, two Colts players, might be the most pro Texans podcast out there. I highly encourage you to visit. I will link. I've got it all compiled at the end of this live stream. I'll link it below. As Daniel Bartlett says, this is a nice podcast setup. Sweater Fisk. I'm going to play some Tavondre Sweat video here in a little bit. It's refreshing. They should lift us up. We lifted their franchise up to new heights for a decade. You know, I saw a breakdown of how much teams improved or got worse over the first couple weeks of free agency. And it was going off of a couple advanced metrics and what have you, for whatever it's worth. I did think it was notable. The only division that had all four teams improving was the AFC South. So again, take it for whatever it's worth. And not all of them improved by a huge chunk or anything, but all 4 teams in the AFC South improved. I don't know. Personally, like I don't hear the Patriots apologizing for playing in a crappy division for 20 freaking years, other than a few little blips here and there. So there's no part of me that feels like the AFC South, we need to start AFC South chants or anything. One last thing about T.Y. Hilton. This will make you feel even a little bit better. It used to drive me crazy that Colts receivers would just catch the ball and then submarine before there was any contact. And this goes way back from before T.Y. Hilton, like back into, I think that Peyton Manning must have taught it or something. I hate to admit it, but this does make sense if you hear the way T.Y. Hilton talks about it.
As a receiver, you got to live to play another down.
That's a fact.
And that's just what it is. Like, I'm going to get everything I can out of this catch, and I'm going to get down. Like, I went months without getting hit.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird thing to brag about, isn't it, as a football player? I don't know if he's bragging or just saying matter-of-factly, yeah, that's what I did. It does make me think of Tank Dell. And there's a kid that is hell-bent on proving that he's not afraid to take a hit and that he can dish out the hits too. And yet he's just so tiny. And I don't know if I would have ever recommended this before, but I wonder if maybe Tank Dell needs to take on a little bit of a Colts receiving mindset. You just go down. You don't need to take these hits, and you can live to fight another day. I would imagine we'll never be able to convince Tank Dell of that, but there is a part of me that sees the value in it. Tavondre Sweat. Let me take a couple questions here. Sorry, you guys have a bunch of comments, and I'm not going to get to them all, obviously. Oh, God, no, Joey George. No. Although, so far, I haven't checked the latest Ohtani statements or anything. I haven't seen any evidence at all of him gambling on baseball, and that's going to be that's the only, Jared Cozart bet illegally with a bookie, did not get suspended at all, just got fined. So I think that's probably what's going to end up happening with Ohtani, whether he was aware or wasn't aware of the gambling. The federal investigation is a whole nother topic, but they typically go after the bookies themselves, not the actual gamblers. If it's millions of dollars, maybe that's different. I don't know. Let's see. Oh, you guys have been active. Glad the Colts didn't get Snead. Yeah. The new the defensive coordinator for the Titans, I'm blanking on his name right now. He's a defensive backs coach. Like, that's where, when he's either been a defensive backs coach or a defensive passing game coordinator. So him getting L'Jarius Sneed in his first year is probably a nice little bump for him, to be able to have that to work with. 2 free agent cornerbacks coming in. I think the Titans improved their team, and yet I don't know exactly what their strategy was. It feels like they're almost like the way Minnesota has been the couple of years before this, where it feels like they're just making moves to be credible, but not necessarily moves that are going to put them over the top. And a lot of that just depends on what Will Levis is. Now, Calvin Ridley, they way overspent for Calvin Ridley, but if you're going to try to find out what you have in Will Levis, then that's the egg you break to make an omelet, I suppose. I hate that omelet analogy. Ladd McConkey. I could get me some Ladd McConkey. Oh, yeah, the catch reel of Tank Dell. He's so tiny. We don't have to take no freaking Ladd McConkey. Okay. Tavondre Sweat. I am torn over Tavondre Sweat and what to make of him, because my God.
And his hand and
just look at this.
Else up to take care of that puppy.
That was the big human being that blocked the pass there. That was Tavondre Sweat. Here's the huge human being who's about to block a pass. Like, he's got good hand-eye coordination. He gets his hands up in lanes. Yes, he weighs 366 pounds. That's what everybody wants to talk about. Myself, honestly, personally, I get impressed with big men who are actually good, genuine athletes too. Like DJ Reader was that way. You remember Keith Traylor? Keith Traylor came into the league as a big linebacker, if I recall properly. Or at least in college, he was a linebacker, and he moved. There are some freakishly big human beings who are also actually really, really good athletes, like Vince Wilfork. And I do think there is something about playing in the NFL. If you want to play defensive line at 350, I mentioned DJ Reader, right? DJ Reader was a very good high school basketball player or baseball player. There's something about playing at like 340 or 350 as a defensive lineman that you've got to be an overall stud athlete. I like to hear that you were like shortstop on your junior high baseball team or something like that. And this kid, he moves. He's not fast. Like he's not like a Jalen Carter who's freakishly big and also freakishly fast, but he moves well enough. And I'm going to do, I just want to watch some highlights. So 366-pound T'Vondre Sweat out of the University of Texas, as many of you know. You're going to see some Byron Murphy in some of these highlights, but try to keep your eyes off of Byron Murphy. Here's, I'm going to go through the highlights first, and we're going to go through some senior game stuff, the Senior Bowl stuff, and then I'm going to watch a complete game with him if we get through it, so I can show you some of the blemishes as well. But let's watch some of these plays.
Look at the big man in here swim. Watch this.
Okay, so you see, he played with his hands first, red run, and then just an incredibly quick swim to come free.
Swim, disengage.
Okay, here he is, right defensive tackle. God, these are just highlights. I should let you run through them. He's the right defensive tackle. He's got to stay in that A gap right there between the center and the guard. In this right here, it doesn't look like much, but honestly, guys that are 300 pounds or so, when you get put in that position, it's hard to keep your feet and keep your position. Just fights his way up. But this is the part that's so encouraging. Like, this offensive lineman gets his hands into him. In the NFL, he can't be quite that sloppy with it. But look at how active Sweat is with his hands. And then he just engulfs people. It's like a phagocyte. Boom. You see that? Jeez. I'm gonna be swearing and everything. Like, watch how quick he is with his hands. The defensive line coach for Texas, who I believe moved on after this year, I don't know what his name is. Somebody text it to me. Leave it in the comments, because I feel like he's done a hell of a job with these guys. They have a really good understanding, really good technique. He fronts up the center and then bam. And then that left guard's just an afterthought on him.
Howard.
Again, quick swim.
Quarterback run, deflected it.
Here he is over the center right here.
Here's where depth plays a factor.
Like, and that guard is just a plaything to him.
Whenever other guys are give him that chance to get to the first. Play fast when they move to 6 guys front. And that's why Oklahoma wants to go fast, because they don't want to.
All right, look, even that one right there. It looked like he kind of might have misread. He played two on his way to the quarterback. This dude's just an ogre. Okay, watch. So he's the right defensive tackle. He goes for this quick chop, which it's not quick enough. Like, he's going to have to stop forecasting that. He'll get better at it when he gets to the NFL. He's way too deliberate and exaggerated with it. Offensive linemen are going to cut his own hands out from him. He'll figure it out. It happens naturally. The fact that he's active with his hands as a big man like that is just so far ahead of the curve, because he could just do this every single play. Just like, okay, he thought it might have been a draw, so just in case he was going to tackle that dude, realizes, no, I'll let go of him and I'll just throat punch this dude on my way back to the quarterback. And then he did that.
Against Houston, All-America a year ago. Slovis.
Like, honestly, it's watching some of the lesser offensive linemen versus him. I don't think you get a good feel for like what he can and can't do in the NFL, because some of these are just poor children going up against him.
Oklahoma State loses. Could be a rematch of what we saw in Dallas. Kansas State, Jake Strong started the game. Tyler Shuck started.
Here's another one. Hands up in the passing lane.
The beginning of the year, Morton's pass.
Like that one. He actually had to adjust to that one on the fly, too. He had his hands up, and then he saw it coming at point-blank range. Good athlete. I mean, just hands. Like, his hands were good placement. Slid up. He put it back down. Like, to have arms that long and to know how to use his hands well, it's a shame for his sake that it's not 1999 because he might go top 3 overall. It's just the game has moved beyond his type of play. But man,
Straight handoff to Pender.
Running back have not scored since the opening drive. James stood up.
okay, so short yardage situation. I don't know if they even got this or not, but watch the displacement here. Boom.
Oh, they're gonna straight game that he's
Here's lined up outside.
missed. See if Baylor can get something going with the running attack.
Okay, so that was against college kids. Now we'll watch Senior Bowl, where presumably it's a higher level down in and down out of college kids. Don't get me wrong, he's got negatives, but like this is fun just watching the highlights. These aren't highlights; these are every snap that he took in individuals at the Senior Bowl from Scott Kennedy's YouTube channel. So I'll link that down below later as well. Yeah. He broke that poor kid's back. And he waved off somebody. Okay. Stalemate, right? Like that one right there. Okay. That was like that likely in the NFL would have been a stalemate at the line. But that quick swim, like he's lightning with it. Like it's just his reaction to keep his hands active.
Honestly, there's not that much. I've heard that if they tag it.
When you guys said something about if they have a game plan for him at all and it frees up pressure on Will Anderson, Autry, and Hunter, it'll be huge. Yeah, the biggest question with him is really his endurance and what kind of snaps you want him taking. I just wonder at 360, 366, how much he'd be able to stay in the game. You know, if the offense goes up tempo or something, he's got to stay in there for passing downs. He struggled at times. When you're not watching the highlight reel, there's some plays where, man, he just couldn't move. Like he'd be in a position to potentially go make a tackle and he just couldn't get there. So that's what I worry about with him with this weight. And he did keep that weight, as you guys are pointing out. He kept that weight while playing in Austin. So I don't think the heat's going to naturally make him skinnier down here. There's no tackling here, by the way, in case you're wondering. You hear that guy in the background saying, bully, bully. Look, now that, though, too, those two plays, even that first one that I said might have gotten stuck at the line of scrimmage in the NFL, like, he's going to push the pocket. Ooh. All right, now that dude came hell-bent for leather. It's a run drill. Oh, no, this is in the past. He jumped him. Okay. This is one thing. So when you've got a bigger guy like that, the O-lineman can just jump you. And that's one of those things where if Sweat didn't have good hands, I would worry about that happening to him a lot. That looked more like a run drill. Taking on a double team there in the run. All he needs to do is push the pocket, force the QB into Hunter will. That's yes, I agree. The big question is just the endurance of it, though, too. Like I'm telling you, there's games where he's gassed, and that's what's going to make DeMeco nervous. Like I can't have a big guy out there. He's useless to me in the modern NFL if he's gassed, because then he's not making plays on outside zone. He's not pushing the pocket. You know, like that's just a huge concern. Because I love him otherwise. In the first highlights I saw of him at the Senior Bowl, some of them were just pure bull rushes, and that's where I was skeptical at first because that doesn't play in the NFL either. Guys, you get tired trying to bull rush somebody every day, and you run into a lot of guys that just simply aren't going to be bull rushed unless you offset it with speed. But like having watched him use his hands and everything, that is another thing that can keep him fresher in the NFL is when he doesn't. If you're not trying to use brute force all the time, and he does become a little bit more of a finesse player, that you can get extra snaps out of that. Oh, this one's nice. See that play? He's at right tackle. Okay, so he locks his dude out. Guy tries to get off to work up. He stays in that gap as he's running. That's really nice. And then it's not a tackle drill, but he would have suffocated that dude in real life. That's nice. So he didn't have a good combine. And on This Is Football with Kevin Clark, he asked Matt Miller. Kevin Clark asked Matt Miller what he thought of T'Vondre Sweat after the combine, where he wasn't particularly impressive other than his size measurements.
I like him. I think it's just you have to understand what he is and isn't. You know, I mean, 366 pounds to move like he does is incredible. And I've thought that every time I've seen him. Even the Senior Bowl was like, how does someone that big move so well? And to be solid, I think probably middle round 2 is where Sweat comes off the board. But it's going to be one of those teams that has a vision for how to let him just wreak havoc in the middle and don't ask him to be something he's not.
Yeah. And so not asking him to be something that he's not. I don't think that's what DeMeco would ask him to do. I think that when you take a guy in the second round, especially, I look at some of the other guys, whether it's Chris Jenkins or Braden Chase, they're much, much, much better athletes. I do have questions about like whether they're good enough athletes to overcome some of their size concerns because they're not big dudes. With T'Vondre Sweat, it's almost impossible for me to imagine him not like imposing his will at least a few times a game. So I look at him and I watch the way he can move at his body weight. I look at his arm size and the fact that he actually uses his hands very adeptly, that he has pretty polished technique. And for a second round pick, I'm almost certain he is going to be a headache to opposing offenses. They'll have strategies and things they can do to try to minimize him, but in some respects, he's just always going to be a headache. I'm not 100% sold on the other guys like always being a headache or a problem. So that's where I am right now with that. And it's like you're talking about second. God, did I say Chase? Braden Fisk? My God. All right, this will have to be the last one we do today. So with Braden Fisk, just versus some of the bigger guys, he kind of got stuck at the line of scrimmage. The LSU game in particular, I can't get out of my head. Like he's destroying Louisville and some of these other teams. But against some of the bigger NFL sized dudes, he doesn't always get off the line of scrimmage, and that makes me nervous. When T'Vondre Sweat is fresh, he's always doing something to somebody at the line of scrimmage. And it's just how many snaps can he go before he wears down? I want to watch the entire Alabama game. It doesn't take long. Somebody points out my hip drop video now has 100,000 views since they banned. I did a hip drop video 3 weeks ago and it didn't get any views at all. And then all of a sudden, a couple days ago, when the passing of the hip drop ban was imminent, it just shot up, and now I'm like number 1 in Google search results. And I got like 90,000 views today in just the course of a few hours. Basically, what I'm saying is I hit the lottery with a hip drop video. Okay, these are going to be. Oh wait, one more question before we go. Tire out of the center of the O-line. We can get the other guys rested, jump in, and move through around them. Yeah, no, you definitely want to rotate guys, but there's times too when the offense, if they decide to go up tempo, your D-line that's out there is stuck out there, and it gets a little trickier. So it's not always as simple as that, but yes, rotating him in and out is definitely going to be the mode of action if you go with him, and they're not worried about it. Let's see. Okay, so this is Tavondre Sweat versus, is it Oklahoma? I thought, what is this? Hold on a second. Oh, it's Alabama. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right. Head up on the center. Boom. Like that club and swim. And this is not the highlights. This is just every play. So you'll see some boring stuff here. See that chop that he does with his hands? He's just a little too deliberate with it. He'll get better at that. That club is beautiful. Here's the chop. Head up on the center. Okay, recognizes that he's going to get combo blocked. He, like, this is like, his technique and his anticipation wasn't perfect here, but it doesn't matter because just look at how freaking big he is. But it is good technique in splitting this double team. And he holds a point. That's the minimum of what you want a guy to do. It's just with him, it's a little bit of a letdown because sometimes he absolutely destroys those. Okay, 2-eye technique. Right here, he does a good job of understanding where the pressure is coming from, fights back. Remember, these aren't highlights. This is every single play. This, like, he accomplished the same thing that J.J. Watt and Aaron Donald do at times with something like that. Not because he was fast, but because he got into that gap and was able to get upfield just with sheer bulk. Like, it's that for him, the 355 or 365 pounds acted like a 4.740 on that. That's another one. Okay. It's kind of a meh. He's coming outside on a blitz here, so his only job there is to contain. If it looks like he's being lazy, he's not. That's just him containing. So when it does get flushed, he can do that. That double chop, I'm just not a fan of it. And honestly, I'm waiting for a bad play to show you. He hasn't really had a bad one yet. See, his hands are active that whole time. So even though I don't like that chop, like, the fact that he just does it out of reaction and doesn't have to think about any of this, he just hits moves. It's a really, really good sign. So he was ready to chop down the center's hands, moves to working on the guard, keeps his hands active, humps back, gets, like, that's just really good stuff. Right here, understands the blocking scheme, understands where the pressure is coming, gets his hands on the sweet spot on that poor guard, embarrasses him in front of his family or up in the stands. The guy's little brother starts thinking about finding another hero. Look at that. That wasn't even good technique, but it was just, I remember talking to guys who played behind Ted Washington. Jay Foreman was the linebacker behind Ted Washington. And he said that it was just like a cool breeze because he was so wide that aside from being really good, Ted Washington, the nose tackle, was just so wide that it affected like the angles the offensive lineman had to take. And it made playing linebacker so much easier. It would have been nice to have a little more speed there, but yeah. There's that double chop. I don't see it ever really, like, he's not winning initially with it. No, the one thing about this game too is we're getting deep into it, and he's still going pretty hard. He's so far in this game, I haven't seen the fatigue the way I saw it in the other one. That one, he was getting combo, and he's just kind of sitting back waiting to see if the quarterback was going to get flushed. I'm okay with that. Okay, so that ended up being probably about 30 snaps or so. I don't have time to watch. Let's watch his delightful personality for a little bit. Here's T'Vondre Sweat at the combine for the first two questions.
Yes, sir. I did. Yeah. I just had to do medical. Medical comes first before all this. So.
And everything good?
Oh yeah. Can't wait to go compete. Ma'am.
She asked, did you weigh in yet?
I haven't. Weigh in tomorrow. So everybody that want to know, you'll see tomorrow.
Yeah, he weighed 366.
What do you expect? Where do you want to be the most effective that you could be?
This past season, I played 365, and that's where I feel comfortable at.
That was a pretty big increase from what you played at the previous season. What was behind that decision?
You know how man is. I mean, you want yourself. We got to grow into our bodies. And this is me, as y'all see. I'm a big guy, big frame. And that's just how it is. I just grew into my body, man.
I like, you know how it is with men. They just, they got to grow into their bodies. And that's what happened. He hit puberty at the age of 22.
Chat's your frame been a talking point with teams when you started interviews?
Everyone. But let y'all know, I'm doing everything at the combine before y'all even ask. I feel like a lot of y'all gonna be like, when I run this 40, I'm gonna shock a lot of y'all, so.
All right, I want to do something. Some of you that know me know that I like the mock draftable spider chart because you can visualize kind of you can kind of get a feel for what a guy is like as an athlete. Not that the testing numbers are always the best way to do it or anything, but if we look at Montez, oh no, that's Montez Sweat. We don't want to look at Montez Sweat and call that T'Vondre Sweat because that's not even close. All right, I'm going to do something here. Let us present T'Vondre Sweat on the mock draftable. All right, so you can see that, right? Okay, so those little numbers there are which percentile he is. So T'Vondre Sweat versus other defensive tackles, he's in the 99th percentile of weight, as you might imagine, 52nd percentile of arm length, but they look plenty long enough. And his wingspan isn't absurd, but man, he uses them like they are. So I've learned to stop looking at the arm measurements as much and tried to just figure out, okay, does the guy look like he has long arms when he plays? Sure. I think he's got longer arms. His hands are immense. I think he's 90. Let me see if I can zoom that up a little bit. 97th percentile on hands, 83rd percentile on height. You go down to the 40 and the vertical and the 10-yard split and everything. He's not that impressive an athlete. The one that I saw, Grover Stewart, the Grover Stewart comparison down here. That's one that I would go for. I think Grover Stewart is not the fastest guy at all, but he's a pain in the neck and he's a presence. A physical presence, but who also can push the pocket and makes life difficult. And there's very much a place for Grover Stewart on the Colts. He's been a pain in the. I love watching him play, but I hate that he plays the Texans twice a year. I would totally spend if I knew I was gonna get a Grover Stewart type of player out of T'Vondre Sweat. At least I would 100% take him in the second round. I like him a lot. He's not going to be the be all end all for like everything you want in a defensive tackle. But if you look at what the Texans have done so far, they've got some versatility. Like with DeMeco Ryans, he's a guy that can play inside on passing downs, can play defensive end on run downs, like whatever it might be. And you can rotate T'Vondre Sweat in and out.
Anticipate running 4.4, 4.5,
You're at a 5.2.
Get up out of there.
What teams have you kind of performed?
What teams have you talked to?
Probably everybody, like everybody, because I went to the Senior Bowl also, so I done met with everybody.
Did you ever perform with the Buccaneers?
Not
Did you talk with the Buccaneers?
yet.
Perform with the Cowboys?
I did.
How did it go, and what do you like about the Cowboys?
It went great, actually. First, I got to give a shout out to my guy Paxton. He was in there, so that was pretty cool. You know, seeing him on the other side and not as my teammate. You know, so that was pretty cool. But it went great.
What about the Texans?
What about the Texans?
I haven't met with them yet.
I don't. This was midway through the combine.
I haven't met with them yet today.
Every team in the league,
Yeah, I did mainly everything at Senior Bowl.
When
Yeah.
you talk about, men have to grow into their frames, all the
Right.
what kind of nutrition or diet were you kind of using along the way as you were growing?
This woman's hammering him on the diet and weight. She says, as you mentioned, the men have to grow into their bodies. What kind of nutrition and diet were you using along the way?
What helped that process?
God. God. I'm just a big guy. You know, a lot of people get scared of the numbers and all that, but when y'all see me move tomorrow, I feel like a lot of people are going to be like, is he worried about his number? You know what I mean? So it's just God, and I give a big shout out to my nutritionists at the University of Texas. They helped me a lot, and my coaches.
I wonder, the fantasy of the 400-pounder is always one that people just love. People love whenever they hear a guy's pushing 400. 366 is about the upper limit of what I think you ever really want a football player to be. I'd love to know exactly what his conversations with DeMeco were like. And then maybe, DeMeco and Nick's conversations with the University of Texas coaches, because he seems like a good kid. He plays his butt off relative to his body weight. I think there are a lot of bigger guys that don't make the effort at moving the way he does. There's just sometimes where he does get a little bit worn down. I have no way of knowing what DeMeco thinks about having a guy like T'Vondre Sweat. I think that he likes guys that can impose their will on people, and he also likes to rotate his defensive linemen. So just as he has, he's had a couple defensive ends that are smaller, like Majai Sanders was effective for the Texans as a pass rusher, but he's way too small to put in as an every down run defender. Likewise, T'Vondre Sweat, in this day and age, not going to be a first rounder. Like, I think he probably would have been a first rounder in an earlier era of the NFL. We're just not in that era anymore. So I would say right now, I put it at if T'Vondre Sweat is there when the Texans are drafting, and let's say those other two defensive linemen that we were talking about are there too, I'd say there's a 40% chance that it's T'Vondre Sweat versus the other remaining defensive linemen at this point. I like him. I like him way more than I thought I would. I mean, I knew I was going to like him as a big tough dude that plays with good technique, but I think there's more toughness to him than you might suspect. Like when it comes to just gutting it out and trying to get it done when you are tired. And a lot of that's with him. It really might come down to the interviews and everything else more so than anything else. And he's going to be meeting with a lot of teams because he's a projected second rounder. I'm going to call it a day here because I'm hungry and I need to go find out if Ohtani talked about anything. This is a Texans / Shohei Ohtani gambling and or wire fraud account these days, and also a hip drop tackle tutorial. Thank you, everybody. I'm Seth Payne. I played for the Texans a long time ago. If you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, all that stuff, and I will have some more content for you tomorrow. I'll start working on more of these defensive linemen. Thank you.